He was the perfect host at his own charity fundraiser. All smiles, walking slowly with a cane. The same cane Sophia once told her circle he faked using for pity. Dressed in a navy tux with faint charcoal embroidery, John looked every bit the resilient survivor. People clapped. The cameras clicked. The violins swelled behind him. But his fingers stayed curled around one thing in his pocket. A phone quietly receiving messages in real time from a synced burner, Sophia thought he'd never see again. The ballroom was wrapped in warm gold light, floral centerpieces glowing under crystal chandeliers. Guests sipped their wine. Reporters took notes on his recovery. But none of them knew that every new vibration in John's pocket brought him closer to tonight's real purpose, not to raise awareness, not to announce new funding, but to expose what had rotted quietly behind his silence. Just a week ago, John hadn't even been sure he'd attend this gala in person. Recovery had been long. His joints still ached in the morning. The doctors still watched his blood counts every few weeks. But what truly weakened him wasn't illness, it was betrayal. And tonight, in front of hundreds of guests, his betrayal was about to speak in Sophia's own words. He glanced across the room. There she was, Sophia, the same woman who used to sleep beside him in hospital chairs when his immune system collapsed. Now she posed 4 pictures in the same venue she once cried in. Hair curled, skin flawless, that practiced media smile on her lips. And right behind her, Ryan, John's former assistant. Now Sophia's so-called consultant. They didn't stand close, but they didn't need to, because in John's pocket were messages. Messages like, "Smile pretty tonight. Can't wait to fly out once we're done pretending. He still uses that damn cane. You'd think he'd get tired of playing victim, just keep clapping. One last show. After that, we're free." The crowd didn't know, not yet. But the moment would come. John had planned it precisely. A curated intermission just before the second act of the presentation. An unexpected tribute. Guests would be asked to look up. The lights would dim, the projector would spark to life. And Sophia's own affair would unfold in soft blue font. One chat bubble at a time, each time stomp, a nail in the coffin of her curated persona. Deborah had helped him prep the AV quietly. She hadn't asked questions, she just nodded and did what needed to be done. That was her way, calm, steady, without judgment. She was the only person on the event team who hadn't left when John's diagnosis became public. The others had shifted to more visible roles, or quietly resigned. Deborah stayed. And tonight, she was running the control booth. John took another sip of his sparkling water, nodded politely at the mayor's assistant, and let his gaze rest one last time on Sophia. She was laughing, probably making some joke about the cake. Probably commenting on how impressive the turnout was. She had no idea. The walls were about to collapse. One more buzz in his pocket. Remember to smile when they toast him. Then we vanish. John smiled too. Just in time for the cameras. And as the MC stepped up to introduce the special surprise presentation, he leaned back against his cane. The same cane they said was fake, and whispered to himself, "Let's begin." John once lived at the center of attention, producing viral campaigns, managing media firms, and steering entire branding narratives from behind the curtain. He was the kind of man people quoted at conferences. Clean suits, clipped tones, fast decisions. He never bragged. He didn't need to. Every deal he made spoke for him. Investors respected him. Journalists feared missing a quote from him. By 35, he'd built a digital media empire, and for a while, he had everything. Or so it looked from the outside. But one day, his hand didn't stop shaking. Then he couldn't hold his pen straight. Eventually, he couldn't walk without collapsing at first, Doctors called it stress, then burnout. By the time the real diagnosis came, a rare autoimmune nerve disorder, John had already lost half the strength in his legs. His condition came fast, ruthless, and indifferent to reputation. He went from closed-door boardrooms to open hospital wards. Meetings turned into blood draws. Negotiations became discussions about treatment plans. And Sophia, his wife of 6 years, the one who had once held his trembling hand during his first fall, began to vanish, not all at once, but piece by piece. Sophia had always been elegant, poised, and camera-ready. A lifestyle influencer, with a curated smile and a perfectly timed laugh. When she met John, she saw stability, wealth, power, quiet charm, and when the illness came, and that image cracked, she looked elsewhere to fill the frame. Not immediately. First came distance. Then came the smirks. Then came the whispers, "He's not as sick as he acts," she'd say to friends between sips of champagne. She started traveling again alone. Her captions grew colder, more curated. Behind the scenes, she reignited an old connection. Ryan. Once John's assistant, now a marketing consultant, with just enough charm and none of John's moral compass. Together, they planned photo shoots in Milan, pool parties in Morocco. While John stayed home, learning how to walk again, Sophia never said she wanted out. That would have made her look heartless. Instead, she smiled sweetly at events, placed her hand gently on John's shoulder for the cameras, and sent him wellness teas from airport lounges. She never said divorce. She just slowly erased herself, and while all this unfolded, someone else was quietly stepping into the gaps. Deborah. Deborah was never flashy. She wasn't one for center stage. As a charity event coordinator, she worked in shadows, timelines, budgets, seating charts. She didn't wear designer. She wore neutral flats and carried a clipboard. But she watched everything. And more importantly, she remembered what people forgot. Like John's medication schedule. Or how long he could sit before the pain returned. Or the fact that he preferred sparkling water over still. When most of the staff ghosted him, afraid to be associated with a fallen CEO, Deborah stayed. She didn't ask questions. She just kept showing up. She organized the house while he recovered. Sorted out the gala plans when no one else would. She never overstepped. She never lingered. But her presence was constant. And quiet constancy was something John hadn't realized he missed until it returned. He noticed her one night when he woke up on the living room couch. Drenched in sweat, trembling from nerve pain. Deborah had covered him with a blanket, placed a fresh bottle of water by his side, and left a simple note, "Call if you need." She never expected a thank you, and somehow, that made it harder to forget. Meanwhile, Sophia's betrayal moved from whispers to recklessness. John didn't go looking for evidence, he didn't need to. Her phone pinged constantly. Ryan's name appeared like clockwork. One day, she left her burner phone charging in the guest bathroom. That's when John saw the texts. He read them. All? He said nothing. But he remembered. There were messages mocking his limp, messages about faking emotions, about playing the long game. One message even joked about announcing their relationship at his funeral, if he didn't recover fast. Enough. And that's when John decided. Now. As the charity fundraiser approached, an event he had once hosted to fund research for people like him, John made a quiet decision. This gala wouldn't just be about raising funds, it would be about restoring something he had lost, not his legs, not his name. Something deeper, dignity. And the only two people who would understand the weight of what that meant were Deborah and the man who had helped destroy it. Ryan. Deborah handled the AV logistics without hesitation. She didn't pry when John requested a second projector be wired to a separate device. She didn't question the guest list changes. She simply nodded and said, "I'll handle it." That's who she was. Behind her calm was a fire John hadn't noticed before. A sense of protection that wasn't loud, but absolute. She guarded details. She shielded his image without ever asking for recognition. She watched the way Sophia posed with designers and chose backdrops for sympathy, and she watched the way John stiffened at each fake smile. They never spoke about it. They didn't need to. By the time the night arrived, John was walking again, cane in hand, suit perfectly tailored. Sophia was in full glam mode, camera-ready, unaware. Ryan was consulting, smirking behind champagne glasses. The donors greeted them as power couple royalty. But the real power, tonight, stood at the back of the ballroom, in the AV booth, where Deborah waited with one hand resting on the switch. And when the moment came, when Sophia reached the podium to talk about love, strength, and survival, John would walk to center stage, not to steal attention, but to return the truth where it belonged. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry. He was ready. John had just regained enough strength to walk across the hallway, unaided, when the silence in the house gave way to voices from the patio, laughter. Light conversation, then Sophia's unmistakable tone, low but cutting. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop. He had come for water. But the words came clear through the cracked glass door. You know, Sophia chuckled, stirring something in her mimosa glass. Maybe his nerves just needed a reality check. I mean, he looked fine to me. A little dramatic, but fine. Table erupted in polite laughter. She was surrounded by two stylists and an old college friend. No one objected. Why would they? None of them had seen John when he couldn't hold a spoon. None of them had stood outside the bathroom while he vomited from the side effects of nerve suppressants. They saw what Sophia posted: elegant brunches, blurry sunlit selfies beside his recovery bed. Fake concern in perfectly filtered frames. John didn't step outside. He didn't slam the door. He simply turned back, the glass of water untouched, and returned to the living room where his cane leaned quietly against the sofa. That afternoon, he received a misrouted message. It came from Sophia's secondary device, the one she claimed was just for social media backups. She'd left it synced to their shared home network. The preview line alone was a punch in the gut. He's dumb enough to think I'll show up to that fundraiser like a doting wife. Imagine the sympathy donations. The message had been meant for Ryan. He stared at it. Not for a minute, for 20, 30. Long enough for the screen to dim twice, and then shut off completely. He didn't reply, didn't confront her. He archived it, backed it up, and moved on. But something in him had shifted. That night, he called the event tech company. The original venue for his charity gala had a modest projection system good for slideshows and donor videos. But he requested something more robust. 3 new HD projectors, all wirelessly synced to his private number. Each device would auto-display any media he cued, without delay or warning. He made sure to disguise the upgrade as a tech sponsorship. Sophia wouldn't notice. She rarely read emails labeled technical. He then rewrote the guest list, expanded it, invited not just donors, but influencers, critics, old industry allies who had once admired him, and some who had doubted his comeback. But most of all, he made sure Ryan's newest investors would be there, the ones who knew nothing of his personal entanglements. The ones Sophia had been grooming with Instagram wine nights and curated power couple reels. Deborah noticed the changes. She always did. She didn't ask questions. Instead, she stayed 2 hours late on Tuesday, quietly moving the projector controls from the podium to a panel near John's seat. She cross-checked the guest list with media approval forms. When she asked if he needed help assembling the AV schedule, he just said, "Not yet." And she nodded. As always, meanwhile, Sophia was busy perfecting her role. She ordered a new dress for the fundraiser, a champagne silk gown tailored for drama. She arranged a hair and makeup team and commissioned a photographer to capture the story of their resilience. When John came downstairs in sweats, she placed a hand gently on his chest and whispered, "Let's make sure they remember how strong we were. Not you, we." It was branding now. In the days leading to the event, Sophia hosted live streams from their garden, tagging wellness brands and hinting at a joint interview to come. She never mentioned the diagnosis by name to clinical, but always let the pity simmer just enough. And John, always in the background of her frame, always walking a little better, was her proof of redemption. One evening, she left a handwritten card on his desk. It read, "Let's survive this with grace. You inspire me." There was no signature, just her lipstick mark at the bottom. He filed it with the burner phone screenshots, along with the video of her in Ryan's car. Along with the call logs Deborah had silently forwarded when Sophia had forgotten to remove Ryan's name from a joint vendor email thread. John never said a word. He didn't change his tone with Sophia. He still smiled when needed. Still nodded in photos. Still thanked her when she passed the salt. But at night, when the cameras were off and the rooms went still, he opened the encrypted folder and re-watched her betrayal frame by frame, like an editor studying cuts, preparing the final take. The final week arrived. Deborah confirmed press would arrive at 5:30. Guests were expected to take their seats by 6. Sophia requested a spotlight entrance and floral arrangement near the stage. "White roses," she said. "They're symbolic. You know, for survival." John approved it, with a soft hum. He asked Deborah to switch the projector's idle background to a static image. "Thank you for believing in the truth." Sophia never noticed. Ryan RSVP'd late. He always liked attention. He signed his message +1, if Sophia allows. It was the kind of arrogance John used to laugh at. Now it barely registered. 2 nights before the fundraiser, Deborah stayed after everyone else left. She stood quietly in the ballroom, watching the lights dim. Then glanced toward the screen. "It's going to be a powerful night," she said. John looked over. "For them," he replied, "not me." She nodded, "Still worth it." And then, gently, she turned off the last lamp, as if shielding the room from what it was about to witness. Sophia had no idea the sympathy she had orchestrated would become her exposure. Ryan didn't suspect the mic checks would include one final audio line extracted from a call Sophia never knew was recorded. John wasn't just fighting to reclaim his name. He was preparing a silent trial, where the guests were the jury. And the truth was already QUEUED. There were days John couldn't lift his leg off the mat, even with both hands bracing it. Days he'd stare at his reflection in the hospital's mirrored therapy room and not recognize the man hunched over in sweat-drenched cotton. His jaw clenched as he crawled forward, dragging limbs that no longer responded like they used to. Each session inched him closer to walking again. But each hour inside that white room chipped away at what little pride he had left. The therapists were kind, but transactional. They'd clap softly when he completed a set, adjust his straps, lower their voices when he shook violently during certain stretches. But it was routine for them. For John, every muscle twitch was a scream. Every vomit, after a nerve flare-up, was humiliation. He never invited Sophia to rehab. She came once, posted a story with him in the background. Captioned it, "Healing isn't linear." She didn't see the tears he wiped when she left. That night, from his therapy bed, John opened her livestream by accident at first. It was auto-playing. There she was, lounging at a rooftop bar, laughing with 2 mutuals they used to have over for dinner. One of them said something about how strong she was. Another joked, "Imagine being that patient with a man who whines about his legs." Sophia laughed softly, but audibly. He closed the stream before they could toast. John didn't want pity. Not then, not now. He wanted silence, room to breathe. Loyalty, not performance. At his lowest, the house was loud in all the wrong ways. Sophia would float in between appointments, tapping heels across the marble floor, talking to brands, stylists. Or sometimes Ryan, always on speaker. She never lowered her voice. She assumed he was asleep when he wasn't. One evening, as John lay on the recliner with an ice pack over his neck, he heard her joke, "He's basically furniture now." Still expensive though. He didn't confront her. He didn't have the strength, physically or emotionally. But something in his chest twisted so hard, it took hours to untangle. That night, he skipped his medication just to feel something else. The fever that followed nearly hospitalized him. The only person who noticed the changes, who actually saw him, was Deborah. She was always quiet, always in the background. She managed his charity events and handled planning with military precision. During meetings, she never corrected Sophia directly, but her eyes flicked downward whenever Sophia got something wrong. She would gently adjust a date, reassign a seat, or restock the table water when Sophia walked away mid-sentence. John remembered the first time. She handed him a folded schedule while he was in his wheelchair. She knelt slightly, nod to patronize, but to meet his eye level, she said only, "I kept the front row chairs wide apart. It'll make things easier," and she moved on. No fanfare. No social media post about helping the differently abled. It was the same during gala prep. Sophia would flit in with swatches and champagne, while Deborah stayed behind to adjust the lights for John's vision sensitivity. She didn't need instructions. She simply noticed and acted. There were moments that haunted John more than the disease. Like the night he tried to reach the medicine cabinet and fell, dragging a vase down with him. The crash was loud. But Sophia, 2 doors away, didn't come. She posted a photo of the sunset on her story 10 minutes later. Deborah arrived the next morning and saw the shattered glass still in the corner. She said nothing, just swept it up while confirming logistics. Or the time John had a panic attack mid-rehearsal and excused himself. Sophia rolled her eyes and whispered to a vendor, "He gets like this sometimes. It's the meds. Or maybe the guilt." Deborah followed him silently, handing him a bottle of chilled water. He never asked. She just knew. There was a difference, he began to realize, between people who helped because it completed a narrative and those who helped because they simply cared. Sophia loved the image of resilience. She stood beside him in photos, in videos, in captions, dripping with grace. But the moment cameras vanished, so did the warmth. She wasn't cruel, not outwardly. She was just never, present. She asked the right questions during interviews, like how do you stay so brave? But never asked what he needed when the lights dimmed. Bra asked. Nothing, but understood everything. She timed her texts around his therapy breaks. Never too early, never too late. She kept mints in her bag because she noticed the pills left an aftertaste. She even learned which brands of compression socks didn't dig into his skin. She never posted about it. Never told anyone. That was the part that broke John the most. Not the illness. Not even the betrayal. But the realization that someone had been giving quietly all along, while another had only ever performed generosity for applause. John once believed that love was loud, celebrated, showcased, declared. Now he wasn't so sure. Maybe the deepest care didn't need to be witnessed to be real. Maybe the quietest people carried the heaviest. Loyalty. He began to see his past clearly through the lens of recovery. Sophia had always been drawn to stages. From the beginning, she sought platforms, her lifestyle blog, then beauty partnerships, then wellness panels. John had been another platform. Stable, reliable, Instagrammable. The moment he stumbled, the lighting wasn't right anymore. Ryan, too, was a mirror to that same hunger. He used charm like a credit card. Transactional, shiny, flexible. He didn't care who paid the balance, as long as someone else footed the emotional. John spent nights reviewing their texts. Sophia and Ryan talked about public image, timing the reveal, and how to use the fundraiser to flip the narrative. Not once across 97 messages did either of them mention John's health, or his pain, or his progress. Deborah never texted anything performative. Her longest message was, "Venue has backup generator. Forecast shows light drizzle. I'll pack umbrellas, just in case." But her actions were essays. As the gala neared, John found himself rehearsing less in front of mirrors and more in his mind. He thought about the moment the projection would switch. The moment Sophia's smirk would falter. The moment Ryan would check his phone and realize every guest in that ballroom had just seen their private messages. But before that moment came, there was this one, quiet, dimly lit. He sat across from Deborah in the event hall the night before. The fundraiser, she was fixing name tags, aligning them with soft precision. He watched her, noticed the small crease in her brow when things didn't fit perfectly. She hadn't noticed he was looking. "Why do you do this?" he asked softly. She paused. Looked up. "Because someone should care when no one else does," she said. "And not because it's pretty." That night, he finally slept. Not because everything was healed, but because finally, something was honest. 2 days before the gala, while Sophia was in the backyard doing a product shoot with rose petals and faux meditation poses, she left her backup phone on the kitchen counter. John had seen the device before, always face down, always charged. She claimed it was for her social media drafts and brand approvals. But he had long suspected more. This time, she forgot to lock it. John walked in quietly. The soft click of his cane muffled by the marble. The phone lit up with a notification. Ryan's name at the top, followed by a laughing emoji. No passcode appeared. She had been careless. Without hesitation, John picked it up and walked to his study. Closed the door, connected it to his laptop. No software had to be installed. No hacking tools needed. Just one sync, and the flood came rushing in. What he found didn't surprise him, but it did confirm everything. Weeks of texts, messages that went beyond betrayal. Sophia and Ryan weren't just planning an escape from the marriage. They were ridiculing him, laughing at his illness, using words like stage prop and pity parade. Sophia had sent a video of John in therapy, where his legs shook during balance training. The caption, "He calls this progress," Ryan replied. "At least he's good for donations. Maybe we should keep him broken a little longer." John closed his eyes briefly. Not from pain, from clarity. This was no longer a marriage. It was a public collaboration built on staged compassion and private cruelty. But it didn't end there. The next thread shattered whatever was left. Sophia had written, "That little mouse-looking intern. Bet she dreams he notices her." Ryan had answered immediately, "Let her. Gives us someone to laugh at while she polishes the glassware." They were talking about Deborah. Quiet, loyal Deborah, who never asked for credit. Who stayed late to shift light panels because John flinched under harsh beams. Who walked behind him during rehearsals, not beside, so he didn't feel watched. Who remembered what kind of tea calmed his nerves, but never posted it online. They mocked her for being invisible. But John realized those who gave in silence were the only ones who ever truly mattered. He didn't cry. He didn't slam anything. He didn't even close the messages. He simply opened his event software and added a second live stream. This one wouldn't just play evidence from the burner phone. It would mirror the backup phone's data in real time, synced to a private screen only he could trigger. The projector would flash every image, every video, every emoji-laced mockery, not with rage, but precision. He didn't want an audience for revenge. He wanted an audience for truth. The rest of that day moved like glass, transparent, but fragile. Sophia returned indoors, complaining about the sunlight and asking if the gala's red carpet could be moved under shade. John smiled, nodded, and asked if she wanted lemon in her water. She laughed and said, "Still my thoughtful hero," and went back to filming a skincare reel with the phrase "strength in softness." That night, John couldn't sleep, so he walked, no cane, just himself. Slow, uneven steps through the hallway where so much of his sickness had played out. He passed the photos Sophia hung of them during their healing journey. All staged, all carefully captioned. He stopped in front of one, her feeding him soup. In reality, she'd only lifted the spoon once, for the photo, then passed it to the nurse and vanished for a brunch. He turned the frame down. The next morning, Deborah arrived early to run a light check. She looked tired. She always did, but this was different. He asked, gently, if she was okay. She nodded, but didn't meet his eyes. It was unlike her. "What is it?" he asked, pausing in the middle of the ballroom. She hesitated. Then said, "Sophia. Made a few changes. She asked to move your seat further from the mic. Said your voice still tires easily." It was a lie, and they both knew it. She also requested a speech slot for Ryan. Deborah added softly. John laughed once. It echoed too loudly in the empty hall. "I'm going to need that mic close, Deborah," he said. "And I'd like the remote for the projector." Her eyes flickered. Of course, she didn't ask questions. But something in her shoulders straightened. That afternoon, he uploaded the final sync into a hidden folder. The live feed from the backup phone would update every 10 seconds. If Sophia texted Ryan during the event, which she would, it would display unfiltered for everyone. He made one change to the program pamphlet, unmasking illusion. A special segment by John. Sophia noticed it, but assumed it was a motivational clip. She liked surprises, as long as she believed she controlled them. 2 hours later, Deborah placed the final seating cards while John practiced walking the aisle. No limp, no cane, just raw balance. And when he reached the stage, Deborah adjusted the mic stand without being asked. She looked up and said, "I never liked illusions." He looked at her, really looked. "Me neither." Later that night, as Sophia got fitted into her designer dress and called Ryan from the hotel suite, John sat by the projector, watching the synced screen blink to life. Ryan, big night. Think anyone will cry. Sophia, hopefully, guilt equals dollars. The countdown had begun, not just to the gala, but to the collapse of everything false. This wasn't about vengeance anymore, it was about precision. The ballroom shimmered under pale lavender lighting, chandeliers casting soft reflections against mirrored walls. Guests murmured behind crystal flutes, the room buzzing with influencers, philanthropists, reporters, and legacy donors. The air smelled of roses, champagne, and polished ego. Sophia moved through it, like a crowned queen, lips glossed, smile timed to each camera click. She looked immaculate, the picture of grace beside John. John walked slowly, deliberately, without his cane, arm loosely linked with hers. Each step was balanced, stable, quiet. But in his mind, each step echoed like a drum. Tonight had taken weeks of planning. Months of silent patience. Years of pain. Sophia leaned toward him on stage, whispering, Let me take the mic first. I'll soften the room, make them love you, trust me. He nodded. Go ahead. The room dimmed. Spotlight hit the podium. Sophia stepped forward, hand placed delicately over her chest. Everyone, she began. Voice trembling with artificial vulnerability. Thank you for being here. This event means more than I can express. My husband, John, he's shown me what strength truly looks like. Soft gasps. Gentle applause. A few guests dabbed at their eyes. He's fought through something most people wouldn't survive. He's taught me about resilience, patience, courage. She paused, voice cracking. There were nights I didn't know if he'd ever walk again. She turned slightly to look at him, lips curled in gentle awe. But here he is. Standing beside me, my hero. And right then, behind her the screen lit up. At first, no one noticed. It was subtle, white text on black dot. Then it blinked. Ryan. You owe me a weekend in Milan, if I get through this without puking. The crowd rippled with murmurs. Another message appeared. Then another. Sophia, pretending to choke up, is harder than I thought. Might actually cry from boredom. Ryan, I'm counting seconds until I can get your dress off again. Sophia, he thinks this fundraiser redeems his journey. Poor guy, let him believe it. Now silence fell like a dropped chandelier. Sophia turned, confused. Eyes squinting at the screen, then froze. Her mouth opened just slightly. But no words came. More texts appeared, a cascade of casual cruelty. Ryan, is Deborah there? Hope she brought her basic shoes. Poor girl probably still thinks John notices her. Sophia, let her adds balance to the photo ops. A little humility never hurts the brand. Somewhere in the back, a wine glass shattered, the audience sat. Frozen, as if collectively holding its breath. Phones hovered mid-air. Someone's mother dropped her napkin and didn't pick it up. Sophia tried to speak, but her voice cracked. There must be a John stepped forward. The mic buzzed gently as he adjusted it. The ballroom was so quiet, even his breath was audible. He held up his glass. Some things, he said calmly, deserve to be read aloud. In full health, the guests turned, fully toward him now, eyes wide. He continued. For over a year, I fought a disorder that numbed my body, that left me in a wheelchair, unable to feed myself, unable to walk. And through it all, I believed I was surrounded by love. I believed I was healing in the presence of loyalty. He glanced at Sophia. She stood frozen, hands limp at her sides. The corners of her eyes twitching. But pain, John said, voice rising just slightly, has a way of making you see clearly. And silence gives you time to listen, not just to your body, but to the people around you. He turned toward the crowd. Every message you're seeing right now came from a phone Sophia left unlocked. Every one of them is real. You may have donated tonight, believing in a journey of recovery, and it was, but not the kind she marketed. His voice didn't shake. It sharpened. She wasn't beside me during rehab. She was beside him. He gestured slightly toward the back of the room, where Ryan had tried to slink behind a column. Guests turned as Ryan was bathed in soft spotlight. A camera operator, sensing drama, redirected his lens. Ryan, John said, used to be my assistant. He had access to my meds, my schedule, my private journal, and Sophia handed it all over. Piece by piece. Sophia's voice finally returned, brittle, high-pitched. John, stop, this is insane. These people came here to support your recovery. They came to witness it, John interrupted. And tonight, they are. The messages continued, auto-scrolling, timed perfectly. Laughter emojis, travel plans, photos of hotel bookings. A shot of John's bedroom sent to Ryan with the caption, Ground Zero of the Pity Empire. Some guests stood up, stunned. Others remained seated, hands clutched in their laps. One sponsor removed his name badge and tucked it into his jacket. Sophia, realizing what was unraveling, reached for the mic. None of this is what it looks like. These are taken out of context. It's a misunderstanding. John took a step back. Play the audio. A final file played through the speakers, Sophia's voice. Recorded in the kitchen a week earlier, not knowing the phone was synced. If this all works, we can say we separated for his health. No one blames a woman for needing space. The sad part of the story, I'll be the survivor. Silence again. This time, Absolute John took another breath. I survived, not from illness, but from this. He turned, looked toward Deborah in the second row. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were wet, but steady. Her hand gripped her seat, as if unsure what to do next. He nodded just once. She stood. Sophia saw her and laughed bitterly. Of course, the charity girl. Is this what this is about? You think this wins him over? You're a footnote, sweetheart. A tragic little backdrop in his crisis. Deborah didn't respond. She didn't need to. John did. She didn't plan this. He said. She didn't ask to be here, but she was. Every day I needed someone, quietly, kindly. She didn't post it, she lived it. Guests started rising, not to leave, but to clap. Softly at first, then louder. A standing ovation not for drama, but for honesty. John stepped off the stage. Ryan had already vanished, slipping out the back door. Sophia remained, spotlight still on her, dress perfectly styled, but entirely out of place. No one approached her, no one offered a hug. One by one, donors, influencers, even her own parents moved toward John. Some nodded. Some whispered, "We didn't know." Others simply shook his hand, and through it all, Deborah stood beside him, not in front, not claiming a role, just present. The projector dimmed. The final message displayed in white text. Recovery is not about walking again, it's about standing up for the first time. The lights came up. Sophia remained alone at the podium. John didn't look back. Didn't need to. By morning, the scandal had already become the top trending topic across every major platform. Headlines ranged from sharp to savage. Charity gala turns into cheating confession. Wife of philanthropist exposed in livestream meltdown, and influencer caught mocking husband's illness. Career over. Sophia's face was everywhere. Not the one carefully curated with filters, golden light, and affirmations. No. This face was retwisted in panic, as message after message betrayed her. Perfectly crafted narrative. The clip of her saying "letter" adds balance to the photo ops, while referring to Deborah, was reposted over 8 million times in under 12 hours. Brands dropped her before noon. Her skincare sponsor cancelled their contract, citing misalignment of values. Her podcast producer pulled the latest episode titled "Choosing Grace in Crisis." Even the motivational reel scheduled to post that morning, her standing with John on the hospital steps, was quietly deleted. Comments poured into every corner of her online life. You faked love for likes. He walked away, and you still fell. I hope Deborah gets everything you never saw. Ryan's fate was no softer. His attempt at damage control, claiming he had been manipulated by love, backfired instantly. Screenshots showed he'd been mocking John's illness long before his affair with Sophia. His resignation from his new employer arrived with a cold one-line email. "We have no room for cruelty, disguised as charisma." Sophia tried calling John the next evening. She used 3 different numbers. All were blocked. She tried a voice memo. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just trying to survive the silence." Then another, "It was a mistake. Everything was moving too fast. I didn't know how to stop." And finally, I miss you. I miss the version of us that worked. He didn't respond to any. Instead, he posted a single press statement on his non-profit's website. Then quietly logged off. I have nothing more to say, except thank you to those who showed real support, then and now. Recovery is a private thing, but sometimes, the truth needs a stage. We move forward now, with new eyes. Deborah never commented. She didn't need to, while news networks tore Sophia apart, and social media ran analysis threads on the fall of a brand queen. Deborah was in the foundation's small office, cataloging receipts, confirming venue refunds, and finalizing speaker lineups for a future event. Invisible strength. Stories from chronic illness survivors. John saw her once that week, as she pushed a box of extra name tags into storage. She didn't look up. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't mention the livestream, but she placed a folded note on his desk as she left that day. It read, "You don't have to say thank you, but I see you." He didn't reply, but he framed the note. The following week, he removed Sophia's name from the foundation's website. She texted once more, "Please don't erase me." He didn't. He archived her role in the annual report as former spokesperson, nothing more. No accusations, no war, just a clean cutoff. John began attending meetings in person again. Slowly, steadily, without spectacle. At the next planning session, he didn't sit at the head of the table. He let Deborah run it. She didn't stumble once. Afterward, as she stacked her tablet back into her bag, she said quietly, "You look better. No offense, but you look ... lifted." He smiled. She didn't push. She never did. But she lingered for a moment longer than usual. 1 month later, they were invited to speak at a panel on authenticity in advocacy. John was hesitant. Deborah wasn't. "People aren't tired of pain," she said. "They're tired of fakes. Pretending they've healed from it." That night, he found himself watching the old footage, his own rehab sessions. The tremble of his fingers. The way Sophia had stood at the door only for the recording, then vanished. But what struck him most was who was always in the background. Deborah, moving chairs, filling water, taping down loose wires so he wouldn't trip. Always in frame, never in focus. He turned off the footage and called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm. "Would you stand beside me?" He asked at the panel. She didn't ask why, she simply said, "Of course." At the panel, he told his story with clarity, not vengeance. He never named Sophia, he never showed the messages. Instead, he said, "I once believed silence made you weak. That if people didn't see your pain, it didn't count. But I learned that the loudest hearts are often the ones never asked to speak." He turned toward Deborah, who stood quietly off to the side. Some people are invisible. On purpose. Because they're too busy holding others upright to ask for applause. After the event, someone asked if he was dating again. He said no, not yet. But when Deborah handed him his coat and said, "You left this," their fingers touched, and for a second, the silence between them felt warm. Sophia, meanwhile, tried relaunching her brand under a new name. She started a podcast about personal growth through adversity. It never passed 500 listeners. Sponsors refused to return. The audience had seen too much. She sold her penthouse. Deleted most of her old content. Even Ryan disappeared. Last seen selling emotional recovery seminars on a private retreat site. One night, she opened an old folder on her laptop, titled John, Original Clips. It held photos, recordings, captions she'd never used. In one, he was asleep during a therapy session, sweat on his brow, pain in every wrinkle of his body. She had written, but never posted, "My hero. One day, I'll deserve him." She closed the file, She never reopened it. John kept moving. He redesigned the non-profit office. Smaller, quieter, less flash, more function. When the press asked why, he replied, "Impact doesn't need spotlight, it needs follow-through." Deborah eventually took over daily operations. John focused on advocacy works, speaking to medical students, caregivers, young people newly diagnosed with the same condition he had battled. He no longer limped, but even if he had, no one would have looked down on him. His strength had already walked through fire. One rainy afternoon, as the office closed early, Deborah stood at the doorway holding 2 umbrellas. "Which path, today?" she asked, smiling. He looked at her, not answering, then took her hand. Not as a grand gesture, just enough to say, "This time, I see you too." Months later, the office had a different rhythms, lower, steadier, honest. The foundation had rebranded its motto to resilience without applause. It wasn't just about charity anymore. It was about narrative correction. Telling real stories. Giving quiet fighters their moment. John arrived early that morning. He walked through the glass doors without his cane. For the first time in years. No brace, no arm to lean on. Just his own balance, hard-earned and quietly claimed. Deborah entered 20 minutes later, sorting budget files. She looked up and paused mid-step. John was standing at the head of the boardroom table. Back straight, no support. She blinked once, and he met her gaze with a smile that didn't need to be grand to be meaningful. "Turns out," he said, voice light but full, "some healing takes walking away first." No one clapped. No one gasped, but Deborah, who had once written a note saying, "I see you," gave the smallest nod, as if to say, "Now you see you too." The boardroom filled slowly. Staff shuffled in, unaware they were walking into a chapter's quiet close. Ryan's replacement, data specialist named Mollix, set up the quarterly report. Deborah whispered a reminder about the vendor invoices. Nothing about today felt cinematic, yet it was. A few minutes into the meeting, someone pointed to the far shelf. There sat a new award. Glass, rectangular, simple, etched in clean serif, Fundraiser. Of the year for resilience and truth below it, a date etched into the base. The night it all changed, and behind that, the old projector. Now unplugged, dust had begun to gather at its edges, but no one moved it. It stayed there like a relic, silent, inert, and deeply remembered. John didn't bring it up. No one did, but everyone who had seen the footage once burn into that screen knew what it stood for. Not revenge, not scandal. Truth, and the cost of hiding it. The meeting carried on budgets. Donor outreach, the upcoming education grant cycle. John spoke sparingly, letting Deborah lead. When it ended, staff trickled out with notebooks and leftover coffee. John remained seated. Deborah turned back toward him as she packed her tablet. "I didn't think I'd ever see you let go of that cane," she said quietly, almost like a question. He smiled again. "Neither did I." A pause, then she added, "It wasn't just the walking, you know. It's how you stood." He looked at her. "I had to learn the difference between collapsing and choosing to rest." She nodded. Silence held between them for a moment longer, comfortable. Earned. Deborah reached into her coat pocket. "I never gave you a real thank you for letting me lead the education initiative," she said, handing him a small card. He didn't open it right away. "Deborah," he said softly, "you gave me more than a thank you could cover." She looked down, not quite used to compliments. The projector behind them caught a slant of sunlight, just enough to throw a prism across the far wall. For a second, the light hit the awards. Etched words, and they shimmered faintly. Resilience and truth. John finally stood. He didn't reach for his cane. Didn't lean on the table, just stood. On his own. You know, he said to Deborah as they walked out together, I think the real charity wasn't about money. She glanced sideways. What was it about, then? Giving people the dignity they were denied, he answered. Including ourselves. Outside the boardroom, the office buzzed, as usual, printers, emails, plans. But behind the closed glass door, a chapter had closed. No spotlight, just light, and in it, a man who had once been mocked for his limp, now moved forward without apology. The projector stayed unplugged, but its last image remained imprinted on everyone who had seen it, not the messages. Not the betrayal, but the way John had stood, raised a glass, and rewritten his ending on his own terms. Final shot, the award glinting. The cane leaning quietly in the corner for